In open session, and if you would please stand for the flag salute. Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to all of you who are here tonight. Thank you for coming. Please remember to turn your cell phones on silent and to speak into your microphone as it's being live streamed on Ukiah Unified's YouTube channel, which you can find on the website. And if anybody would like to address the board, please fill out a public comment form. And I'm going to stop with that. So, want to report out from closed session?
Yes, on item B7, regarding classified leave of absence, the board moved to approve the classified leave of absence. It was a 5-0 roll call vote with 2 board members absent. And the rest of it, we have to reconvene back in closed session after the board meeting to finish the closed session agenda.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Is there a motion? One thing, we're going to pull D9, correct?
Which one?
Pulling D9, the first reading of one of our many board policies, the claims and actions against the district.
I move approval without D9 to the agenda.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we have our student advisor report. We have Spencer Rico, who is here representing Ukiah High. Thank you so much for coming. It's always a real pleasure to have student representatives here.
Of course. My name is Spencer Rico. I'm a senior at Ukiah High School, and I'm the rep to board for the 2018-2019 school year.
Spencer, so you've got to turn your mic on. We're going to put you on this. Spencer, we're going to put you on this.
Okay. I'm just going to repeat what I just said. My name is Spencer Rico. I'm a senior at Ukiah High School, and I'm the rep to board for the 2018-2019 school year. And this is just some notes and things that Ukiah High has been involved in. So on August 2nd to August 5th, it was the fair weekend, the annual fall fair, and FFA Club participated with many participants for some highlight awards. We had Ashley McDonald, who won Reserve Grand Champion, and Riley Iverson, who won first in her break and went to Champion Drive. These are all Ukiah High students. Also on fair weekend, the Interact Club operated fair parking, and spanning from tickets to flagging and coordinating spots on that. And then also over the summer, the grants, or the Drops grant project was also in place. I don't know if you guys are aware about that, but basically in the parking lot, it's kind of at a slope as far as the campus, and they were constructing that so the parking lot can, when it rains, rainwater can go in and pick up trash so it won't pollute the river that runs alongside Low Gap. Fall sports season started. Football preseason record is 3-1. And the girls tennis team had a fundraiser. It was a faculty versus the girls tennis team to raise some money. I was attending at that, and it was very fun as well. The freshman class officers were selected. Homecoming week will be October 8th through the 12th, and the homecoming theme is musicals. The seniors chose Grease, the musical, juniors Willy Wonka, sophomores Wizard of Oz, and freshmen High School Musical. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. You have a question, Trustee Arkin?
Yes. Let's see, Spencer, I heard that Mr. Oslin said that you guys are doing clubs. Is it this Friday? Do you know that?
Clubs Day?
Yeah.
Oh, Clubs Day was actually today. I forgot to
Oh, it was
mention that.
today?
Yeah.
I missed it. Sorry.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? of employee organizations, CSEA is not here, and it looks like, Marissa, are you filling in for Terry tonight? Great.
Hello, trustees. Hello, Superintendent Cuban. My name is Marissa Sizemore. I am a speech-language pathologist for the district, and I am currently part of the executive board of the UTA. So I wanted to share some things with you. We are excited to have several new members join us as site reps at our rep council meetings. We recently participated in the Labor Day picnic that was put on by the Inland Democratic Club, and we were fortunate to have CTA President Eric Hines join us all the way from, I don't know if he was coming from Malibu or from San Francisco, but he came and he spoke, and that was fantastic. We're looking forward to our monthly labor management meetings with the district. Also, the UTA Executive Board is visiting our members at sites this month and next month as we continue to outreach to our new members and gather information about how we can best represent them. And we're in the process of surveying our membership, and we've recently created an online way of doing this, so we're really excited about that. It's kind of a new thing we're exploring. Hopefully we'll accomplish that. I also wanted to remind everyone that CTA has endorsed Tony Thurmond for Superintendent of Public Instruction for the state of California. He's an excellent candidate. He's been a state assembly member. He's been a school board trustee. He's been a city councilman. He's always kept California's kids as his top priority, and I just encourage you all to vote. Also, I wanted to say Lashana Tova. We're in the midst of the high holidays, and it's a time of deep reflection and awakening our intentions about what's most important for us for this year. And so I just wanted to ask some questions that you might want to consider. What are some of the misdeeds that I've committed against myself, others, or the world? What is up for me this year? What is my most important work for the year? What is so enticing that is distracting me from fulfilling this purpose? And what are my intentions for change? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, leadership report, I believe that's you. Mr. Nokomis. The best elementary school Ukiah Unified, right? According to you.
Hi, I'm John McCann. I already got the introduction. So it's kind of interesting. After today, we spent as leadership an entire day with Tom Meany, and it's caused to be a little bit reflective. So I thought I'd start off with the fact that in 1979, I started teaching at Red Bluff High School, and I had 5 classes of U.S. history. That's 40 years ago. They had the audacity of asking the oldest member in each team, what are some things that have been added? I did it quickly, but I said back in 1979, we had books. There were no standards, there were no tests, and if you taught what you thought the kids needed to learn, that was a good thing. Things have changed since then. So I want to be real succinct. We spent some time, and I put a slide together because the superintendent has asked that we have 3 slides. That piece up there doesn't really talk about what we did, but it kind of encapsulates the philosophy. Here's what we learned today. Having teachers talk to teachers and collaborate is one of the most effective ways to improve education. Having a principal that guides them, supports them, and understands that that's the right process, that is the best way for the teams to improve student achievement. It is a lofty goal. It is hard to do. We have to change our culture. So we're going to spend the next 3 years modifying our culture with strategic planning by each principal to make this happen. It won't happen overnight, but this is one of the most impressive things. If we can do it, we'll be there. Right now, only 7% of the schools can do these types of PLCs. That being said, second slide. Second slide.
Beeper, right. Thank you.
Oh, I have to push this?
No, maybe not. It's switched.
Remember, we didn't have those things. I had this new principal next to me, and he's talking about all he's doing, and I'm going, man, you haven't lived until you've had a hand-cranked ditto machine, and you walk out loopy because of the fluid you had to put in it. And he's looking at me like, how come you haven't retired yet, buddy? So don't ask me to push these things. Okay. So I want to give you an example of just where we are and how far we can go. So I went to a third grade PLC yesterday, and they were using Dibble's data, STAR data, LPAC data, and the old-fashioned BPST. And they had all of their kids spread out. They had the scores for all of them, and they spent an entire hour and a half putting them in the appropriate skill deficit groups so that they could provide intervention for 40 minutes a day with the task of, in 3 weeks, reassessing them for progress monitoring to see if they have been successful and move them out. Those are just some of the assessments we have. Those beautiful teachers asked to get 95% group training, which is an additional assessment in phonological awareness and phonemic awareness with skill-based lessons that they would have to learn to teach that would address the exact skill deficits that those kids have. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is our PLCs can get better, but the teachers are working hard, and they have a lot of things that we never had, and they're using them efficaciously, and there's still more to do. Okay, next slide. Who's pushing the button? Okay.
They got your back now.
Okay, so then another very important thing is behaviors. What a concept for somebody who's been in this for 40 years to think we shouldn't expect students to behave this way. We should teach them our expectations. That was an incredible thing for me to learn, going, you're in my class, you're doing what I say, and if you don't, I'm telling your parents. It doesn't work that way anymore. So we have a tier 1 now with our counselor that when there are sufficient low-level reports, like a kid's blurting out in class or a kid's dropping his pencil all the time to divert people, whatever it is, the teacher fills out low-level incident reports, requests the counselor to go to the class, he observes the behaviors, the teacher and the counselor get together and figure out what the tier 1 interventions are. We have a counselor that says to a teacher, this is the trigger for the kid. This is something that you can do to avoid doing that trigger. And so we have that going on right now in the first 4 weeks. Now remember, we have all those assessments, but now we're doing behavior that is just as data-driven as any of those academic assessments because they go hand in hand. If a kid doesn't respond to the tier 1, then we move them to tier 2, and we have very specific behavior goals, and we track the data on them, and they graduate from there. So we have interventions tier 1 in the classroom for academics and for behavior. We have interventions tier 2, and they're all based on data. These teachers literally have to be able to manipulate that data, mine that data, and understand what it means in order to make the lives of these children better in school. And they're doing it. And today I learned you can crank it up a few levels because Tom Maney says, yeah, that's good, but get better. And we're going to make an effort to do that. How'd I do?
Great.
Okay?
Any
All right.
questions for
Oh, yeah, any questions? Go ahead. Ask me anything. I'm ready. I got the data.
Speaking of data, we heard about your data a couple months ago about your reading data because you had tried some new strategies. Can you tell us more about that?
Well, I think the first most appropriate thing to do is my happy dance.
Duly noted.
Okay, and I have, oh, thank you, I do have a new hip. Let me do that again. No pain. Okay,
He's a whole new man without.
I am, you can tell. So we implemented the 95% group at the K1 level for just the last 4 months of school. Now, you know Nokomis has challenges with our population, 94% free and reduced lunch, 56% EL, and over 17% special ed. By the end of the year in Dibbles, we had 72% of our kindergartners in the green, which means they had reached benchmark. And you've probably heard me before. We not only have the most English learners coming into our school in kindergarten, but they're the lowest performers when they get there. So to have Nokomis have 72% of their kindergartners in the green after only 4 months of 95% group training is amazing. And our first graders went up to 56%. So in the district, the lowest performing school started off this year with the highest first and second grade kids in the Dibble scores. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So here it is, I'm telling you, we have a lot to do, and we have to do it better. And I'm saying to my teachers, why don't we just do one more thing? So now second and third grade, thanks to the district, are going to get trained in 95% group, and we're hoping that we show the efficacy of those efforts now in our SBAC scores. Because if our kids can read by third grade, maybe they can think.
It's all gravy. What do we know about the difference between schools that have achieved what you just achieved and kept it going, and those schools that achieved it once and then slipped back?
Well, see,
Is
that's
there
the-
enough data to even know that?
The interesting thing is, it's not based on that kind of data. If you finally have a teacher that says, this child can't do syllabication, which is a phonemic awareness piece, and you have a teacher now that doesn't have to make it up, that they have a 10-minute lesson that they're going to do for 10 days with that child and then reassess them, and then that child gets that skill, they move up to the next level of phonemic awareness, of phonological awareness, and they get to first letter sound and syllabication. And so it's kind of what you've always wanted. Don't have teachers try and figure out, I know they have the skill deficit, what do I do? Now they all have research-based lessons that take them all the way through phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, to the point where they're able to read at a certain fluency. So if the teachers are using the lessons and the students are passing out of those deficiencies, they ideally are readers.
Is
So-
there anything that you think teachers need from this board to help them keep using those lessons?
Well, you've just made a big commitment. You're helping Nokomis make it to the second and third grade. We're the pilot. So if
That's
this
what we can do for
works,
now.
for what you're doing now, it's managed to carry over into the summer so that when these kids that were doing so good at the end of kinder and first took their initial lessons, we saw the carryover. It was the highest we've ever had in those grade levels at the beginning of the year. So we're hoping that we can do this pilot and show that there is efficacy to our efforts.
So Principal McCann, you're saying that there was the usual summer slide, but they only slid down just like everybody else did. They didn't slide all the way down to where they had started.
And in fact,
Wow.
I presented to the Assistant Superintendent for Ed Services and showed that we had some of the highest beginning scores we've ever had in first grade. And so, but we're still piloting, and you've
Yeah.
guys given us a chance to do it for one more year, and we've expanded the grade levels, so.
Great.
And any kindergarten teacher will tell you, if you've got the right curriculum and you know where the skill deficits are, you can help any child learn to read.
Trustee Van Sant, did you have a comment or question?
I'm up here way longer than I'm supposed to be.
I know.
Yeah. But my hip feels good, so I can stand here all
It's not
day.
your fault, it's our question.
There you go.
Well, good.
I wanted to ask you, you referred to culture change that you're embarking upon. What can the board do to help support that? And you may not, you can think about it if you want to not answer
You've
now.
got our
You know, I think this board, in my 40 years, has been the one board that said, what can we do to help support teachers? And you've given reading specialists that really help teachers with those tough kids. You've given us SSCs that really understand curriculum and how to coach other teachers. You've given us a counselor that understands what behavior is about. I mean, you know what? Keep the course. Give us the opportunity to keep coming to you with a little bit better ideas on how to tweak it, but you know what? I can't ask for any more. You've given me behavior, you've given me specialists, and you've given me the time for teachers to collaborate. I just say stay the course, and you'll get the results you want.
Thank you very much. Oh, excuse me, trustee Montpere?
Just one short response to that. 2 counselors and 2 reading specialists and 2 SSC would even be better, but we don't have the money. But, go for the gold. Could you just describe what exactly the training program is? I know your teachers went to a Dibbles conference and came back, and is this something how long does it take for a teacher to become trained in this? I'm just curious.
Okay, so here's an example. In February, we had the trainer come and train everybody in how to do the assessments and what the lessons look like. So those teachers were ready to implement the assessments and to do the lessons. But that's not it. They then come back and they say, all right, you've done that. Let me model those lessons in your classroom and you come and watch me do it. Then they debrief. Then they come back another time and say, now I'll watch you. So in that 4-month period, we had 3 opportunities with the trainer to help us get up to speed, so that now we started this year, and we didn't wait till March to begin teaching. We started teaching in August. And so I'm kind of excited about what we might get this year.
Okay.
So
Thank you so much.
Okay. Acceptance of donations. We have a donation from Ukiah Lions for Ukiah High School, Seroptos International Willets for the South Valley, Kayla Scroggin Woodley and Ukiah Valley Athletic Club for new UUSD teachers. And then for South Valley High School, Linda Weaver, Minton Builders, NorCal Wood Products, A to Z Construction, and the Home Depot for a total donation value of $5,402. Is there a motion to approve the donations?
I would like to approve with gratitude.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, we have 2017-18 unaudited actuals financial report with Pleasant Penny.
Thank you. Okay, so I want to be sure and acknowledge our fiscal department staff that's responsible for closing the books, and that's Katie Aguilar, our director, Christy Bryan, our accounting manager, and Lynn Adams, our accounting coordinator. So thank you very much for all your hard work. Whoops. That's just a list of what we're going to go through. And yes, John, we have the budget cycle. So instead of reading that, I'll just get right into it. I like to do this so that we know what numbers we're talking about. The 3 different colors in the annual cycle indicate the 3 different years of budget numbers that we deal with each year. We started with adopting the budget in June for this year. Now we've closed the books for last year over the summer, and we're looking back. And these are the actuals. The rest of the reports that we do are based on our best estimate of budget information, and this is the actuals, which then will be audited by our independent auditing firm. So, right into our unrestricted general fund, what we're comparing in the columns are the estimated actuals that were presented to you officially when we adopted the 18-19 budget in June. So you got this year's budget, and you got the last estimate of the budget for last year, and now we know the actuals. So we're seeing what the difference is in the budget. And as you can see, on the unrestricted side of the budget, we did very, very well. I went ahead and put the different percentages of variance there, and we're barely over 1% variance, which is very accurate. So we're really pleased with that. I'm really proud of our team. They work really hard to get there. So the number at the bottom of the yellow column, the ending balance, the 1.3 million on the unrestricted side, that drilled down, there are pieces, components of the ending fund balance that aren't spendable. And so then you get to your unallocated ending fund balance of 1.2. And that number matches the actual state form, and that's where you find that there on the right. So we have the unrestricted side and we have the restricted side. And so this is the difference from the estimated actuals to the unaudited actuals. And the drill down on the restricted, the different categorical programs that make up that balance are listed on the right. And then to drill down even further, the other restricted local on the right-hand side chart, the resource 9010 all the way at the bottom, it's 3.3 million. I like to show what that is. And so this is that, if you see the bottom of that first chart, it's the 3.3 million. And those resources in the 9,000 that are locally defined, that's what makes up that 3 million. So we keep track of all of this, the different site monies. The resources indicated in blue are those we've developed for tracking purposes for our ongoing expenses, deferred maintenance, textbook adoption, technology infrastructure, and then the safety equipment vehicle replacement funds. And then we go over, we have the unrestricted and the restricted sides of the budget, and then we have the crossover, I guess you could call it. When we have a restricted program that doesn't fully fund itself, the unrestricted side of the budget contributes to it, and that's where we get our general fund contributions. This is a list of the restricted programs that needed to be contributed to. The routine restricted maintenance is a requirement from the state to have a certain percentage of our budget so that we can take care of our routine restricted maintenance. The special ed, the two different pieces there, one of them is we account for just the regular amount of money we get for a student. If they're a special ed student, that's where that piece comes in. And then the additional cost of the program that we don't get fully funded for is almost $4 million. So that's just some of those highlights. Here's the combined. So when you add the unrestricted and restricted together, this is just the very high elevation view, revenues, expenditures, other sources, uses. And then our ending fund balance, the components of that. In the general fund, you have, those other components that I talked about that you can't spend, and then you see that restricted piece. That's our restricted that we'll be spending next year. And then the unassigned additional reserve is that 1.2 million that you saw again. And then all of our reserves kept in Fund 17, and that's where we have our 9%. The difference that's the favorable amount from what we showed you at the estimated actuals in June, we expected to have an unassigned additional reserve of $614,000. Well, after we close the books, it's the 1.2, so that's a favorable difference of $585,000. Then the other funds of the district, those are the general fund 01 is the main operating fund of our district where most all of our operations go through. There are other specific funds that if you wanted to think of them as separate bank accounts at the county treasurer's office, we have some that have very, very specific uses and that may only be used for these uses, like the adult education, the child development for the preschools, our cafeteria fund. Those are all separate little funds at the county treasurer's office. And so they all have revenues, expenditures, and so forth. And we always present to you the fund balance at year end. And as you can see, yay, they're all positive. Mm-hmm. I show a little historical information to give you some perspective from one year to the other on these. And then this time I have gone into a little more detail on some of these other funds because I don't do that often. It's all within the report, but sometimes we have questions about that. We did have a bigger general fund contribution to the cafeteria fund this year than in the past. And as we analyzed that, we realized that we had $71,000 loss in reimbursement for meal claims the week of the fires. And that participation was down some probably all year, somewhat due to that. And then we also had bad debt to be written off because the cafeteria fund can't legally account for that. They're not allowed to have any of their funds pay for bad debt. So that's where some of the contribution was for that as well. So this.
Is it okay to ask a question now?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
So why do we have bad debt if we were doing so much better on our collections?
We weren't completely successful with our collections. So this is kind of the final amount, because now that we have universal free meals, we
Right.
won't have any.
So we weren't doing
also-
that, we weren't doing that every year, it kind of aggregated and then we did it in one fell swoop?
No.
There was more the prior year.
Oh, okay.
And
Right,
so
we
this
used to
was
have
this
that.
year's.
Okay. And then didn't we save on food when the fires were closed? So wouldn't that have been somewhat balanced? Or is most of the salary, is it mostly in salaries and benefits anyway?
There was probably food loss for spoilage that had been ordered. I don't have a lot of detail on the specifics. I know that the loss in reimbursement was $71,000. So when you add that and the $16,000 in bad debt, you have a little
Yeah.
bit more than the prior year.
Yes.
And as Penny noted, we will get $60,000 of that back. In October, we're expected to get that back.
Which would be too late to claim it for last year, but that will add to this year's revenue.
Can't you don't list that like as an accrual or something?
No, it's probably too far
Oh,
from
okay.
the closing date
Okay.
would be and then actually receiving it. I mean, we're supposed to, as long as the state has the money to fund it.
Thank you.
Building Fund 21, this actually, the school district, UUSD, splits these into two different funds that have always accounted for Measure U and Measure H, building funds. They roll up in the state report all into Fund 21. This isn't so much to look at what we have budgeted, but the fact that it's used for the purposes that it is meant to be used for. And just that we will be using most of those monies this year for the 18-19. Let's see, the fund balance. There was a substantial fund balance when we closed the books, but there are things planned for these funds. Then Fund 25, the residual developer fees. We are working on portable replacements for those, as was described last December in our 5-year accounting for developer fees. So we are working on that, and
Hope to be done this year, or at the end of this year?
we're starting, we're working with our architect, and we're working on it. So we'll give you some progress reports on that.
That pretty much empties out that account.
Mm-hmm.
Trustee Arkin, did you have a question?
Yes, on the U for the high school where it says contractor retention for the lobby, the gym lobby, we're still paying for that?
Well, we have held the retention until the job is completed satisfactorily, and that is an outstanding issue that we do expect to have finalized probably, I say probably only because it's between Thanksgiving or Christmas, but probably Christmas because there's more time available. But we do have things ironed out to the point where that should be able to be scheduled.
So is this the floor that we have to keep replacing?
Well, it's the one that bubbled that hasn't been replaced yet.
Oh,
And this was the money for them that we're holding on to.
Right,
It's not an
Right.
additional cost,
Okay.
correct?
right. No, it's not additional.
okay.
Trustee
They've
Nelson?
never received their final pay for this.
Oh, okay, good.
Trustee
Okay,
Nelson?
thanks.
So in the Measure U, there's been about $400,000 in that fund for several years now. Is that correct? All right.
Okay.
So Fund 26 is where we keep our community development funds that are from the successor agency of the old redevelopment agency funds. We're still receiving those. We did last year, and that's where we had the money to fund the South Valley site improvements. Just that our costs escalated so much that we didn't have, enough funds to fully complete the CTE classroom. So there is a balance there. It's just not enough to finish it. So we'll keep that there, and then we anticipate we will get more funds this year, starting in, it's usually December and June when we receive those. We don't budget that because I don't know for sure that we're getting them. Fund 35, this is the county school facilities, and there's a fund balance there with planned uses for that. We did have a couple of roof projects last year that were bid, but both came in almost twice the budget and engineers' estimates because of the cost escalations in construction. So we're going to rebid those.
They're not going to come back any lower.
Well, hopefully we'll have more money. So that brings us to what do we expect to have happen here? This may look familiar because I've shown this slide before. We have minimum wage increases ratcheting up each year to $15 an hour. We have our STRS and PERS benefit costs continuing to rise without offsetting specific to that revenue. And then our special ed continues to be underfunded. The good news is that we do have an accurate budget and some time to plan so that reductions can begin in 1920. So here's the minimum wage slide that shows where we are as of the effective date of the required minimum amount of pay. And as of January 1st, 2018, we were good for the entire classified salary schedule except for the very first cell. And we don't actually have anybody on that cell, so we were okay. Starting 1/1/19, it goes to the minimum of $12 an hour. We will be seeing some type of a salary increase, for UTA, but we have negotiations with CSEA as well. And so if there is a salary increase, we would add that to this to see where we come in, but it may or may not get us all the way there. Here's a slide looking at just keeping the salary static year over year, what type of increases we're looking at. And we do build these increased estimates into our multi-year projections so that we can account for those. They're big. And special ed, the three things from what's in the future: minimum wage, pension costs, special ed increases. These are the actuals from this year and the prior 2 years. The increase year over year is that very bottom row, 320,000, and then this year it was 467,000, although I think that is less than what we had anticipated. And I know that we have, I feel, a very budget conscious director of special ed, and I would like to commend her for that. She's fantastic. So then the one other thing I wanted to be sure you were aware of is when we adopted our budget back in June, it's only not very long ago, we had put the governor's most recent estimate for one-time funds for 18-19 this year, and it was at $1.9 million. We had, the board had committed $100,000 for collaborative furniture, but when the governor enacted the budget, he moved the COLA from 3% to 3.7%, which is wonderful. The actual COLA is 2.7%, but he also reduced the one-time funding, and so we expect to get about $1 million, and so it would be really $900,000 after the collaborative furniture. So that's kind of important to know. It's not a small chunk of change that it was reduced.
Penny, remind me, we committed $100,000 to collaborative furniture, but we haven't committed the other $900,000?
Right.
And you haven't committed it?
No.
Okay.
No.
You usually have some plans. I didn't-
Well, because it was even before it was enacted, so you could see what happens, what kind of fluctuation we could have. So next steps, see, we're already here. The auditors review these final actuals. We'll present the audit report, we'll get it in December, if we get it in time for the December board meeting, otherwise it would be January. We're going to continue to address our budget structural deficit, provide recommendations for your review and approval along those lines. We're going to meet with UTA regarding our fair share formula in October, coming right up. And then in December, you get to see the first interim budget adjustment for this year. And we recommend that you approve the 17-18 unaudited actuals.
Trustee Montpere, do you have a question?
On one of the newsletters, the CTA newsletter, not CTA, anyway, there was discussion of a chunk of money that had been allocated for schools that were low performing. It had been allocated, or at least, allocated in the beginning of the summer. And I'm wondering, but they were just beginning to distribute it. Are we eligible for some of that money?
That funding is going to county offices.
But
support
will we get some of that back?
Districts in differentiated assistance. We are one of those, as is Willits and Fort Bragg. We are talking to the county office about that.
I know it's always such a lovely discussion.
We are, all county offices are trying to figure out the process, and so we're working collaboratively with the county office to figure out how that funding can help support our goals.
Okay. And what is the impact of our reduced enrollment? Do we have any idea yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Are we encouraged by the increasing revenue at the state level that was in the paper today?
Yes, that the
The
projections,
economic growth,
yeah,
which
they're
generates more money.
yes, that's good.
So we are encouraged? I know you don't
Yes,
want to
but I
commit.
don't-
I'm not asking for
But, right. No, I think that's wonderful when the revenue projections are lower than what actually occurs. So that's a good thing for schools, for sure.
Okay.
And I'll
Thank you.
just add, Gail, a couple of comments. One is our enrollment is down from CBEDS to current by approximately 35, we think.
Oh, it's only 35.
Projections are different, but we looked back to CBEDS last year. We think it's about 35, but that's a large revenue loss for this year. And then our free and reduced lunch percentage is up this year. Our sites are doing a great job getting families to fill out
Yes,
the educational
that's
benefits
great.
form. So in the supplemental concentration grant world, that might offset a little bit of the loss. It won't help us in our base grant. But, so we will be processing all of that.
Right, for the first
And I'll just
interim.
say again, you may have seen some of our attendance campaign ads that we're doing right now. Literally, if we could increase our attendance by a percentage or two, we could wipe out this enrollment loss from a financial perspective.
Well, he's here. Did I read correctly in your newsletter that your school had 100% return on their forms? Yes.
9 classes had 100% return in 5 days.
I read that, yeah.
I need a raise.
It is.
It worked.
Way to incentivize.
Never do it again.
And I'll just add too, and Nokomis has done an amazing job, and the work of the family community liaisons that they do in this area is incredible. The high school is up 7%, and largely due to the efforts of the liaisons and other staff.
Okay.
So it's good.
And any other questions? No? Is there a motion to approve the unaudited actuals financial report?
I so move.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Penny. We have a whole bunch of board policies that are here for first reading, and then they'll be back on the consent next month. Are there anything you want to say about any of them, or anyone has any questions or input? Now's the time. Otherwise, they'll be back next month.
I was just wondering on the one about loaning facilities to other groups. I'm just wondering from Gabe, how, we just happened to be at the track one day after an event and the garbage was all over. Is there any way that we can build in a fee that if they clean up, they get it back, but if we have to hire extra people, it comes out of their pocket?
We're working on facility use right now. We really need to look at it. It should be a net, it should not be a loss to us, but we're finding that we may need to bring on custodial support. So anyway, we've got our collaboration with the city of Ukiah. We've got many youth organizations who use our facilities. It's an issue we're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
But really, a minor change to say either you give us $200 or you clean it up yourself, it might not have to wait until we solve all the other issues.
Yes.
Good point. Thank you.
Okay, so educational program, mathematics placement report for 17-18. Is that?
I move approval.
Of her report?
We were going to hear it. No, next month, you can hold off for that.
Is she moving approval of the report?
I want to hear you, Katie.
But thanks,
Jump
Megan.
to the data.
Sure. Ian, could you pull the slides up? It's on the desktop. Yeah.
And there's a lot of information in the beginning, so if it's okay with the board, we can jump to the data, unless you have questions about all of the information in the beginning.
Which is the same information from last year, just on requirements and our pathways.
I like the graphs.
That is not it, but that looks really pretty. Right there. Yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to just skip through our process that we've been doing now for the last couple years and talk about our 9th grade enrollment. So this data is from last year, and I really want to thank Jackie Sherman and Chris Kinney, who together have put it in a format that will be quickly updated when we finish this first semester, and so we'll actually get into reporting the data in a more timely fashion. So the data we're looking at is 17-18, and you'll see that the graphs show the enrollment by subgroup. A red circle indicates subgroups with lower enrollment that are areas of concern, and then the number of students in each subgroup is on the bottom, with N being the subgroup size. So when we look at, our goal is to have as many students as we can in 9th grade enrolled in Algebra 1. And for 17-18, we had 50%. It was slightly lower than it was in 16-17, which was 53%. So we're going to continue to watch that. You know, our goal is to have that be higher. But also we want students to be successful in mathematics as a whole. But you can see the distribution of students being placed in courses. So that's the first slide.
The second slide is showing the percent by female and male, and unfortunately, last year, we were equal. We had about 53 to 52, and this year, what we're showing is that we have a higher number of female students placed in Algebra 1 compared to male students. So we want to continue to look at that to make sure that we can get back to 50-50, where we would like to be a more equitable. But that is a new demographic.
Doesn't that seem shockingly large change?
Yes.
Wow, could there be a mistake?
I don't think so. We went back and looked at it. We have less boys enrolled in Algebra 1, percentage-wise. Yeah. So that is something that we want to continue to look at. When we look at our not socioeconomically disadvantaged compared to socioeconomically disadvantaged, you can see that there is a gap between those two, and that that the percentage overall was a little bit lower for socioeconomically disadvantaged. So that is, again, something we want to continue to look at. And then when we look at our multiple race, our race and ethnicity, the interesting part on that is, overall, we have disparities across